to another episode of Off the Menu. I'm your host, Vincent Franchini from Tumblr House, here with a postnatal Charles Coulombe.
Postnatal. You mean like postnatal drip?
No, that was not a
No.
typo.
Oh, all right. Postnatal. Wait a minute. You mean as in I managed like a salmon going upstream? I managed to be born?
Like a salmon going upstream, you managed to be... Yes,
Well, you know how tough it is to get born today.
that's true.
Yeah. Although I have to admit, in my day, it wasn't all that hard because we unborn, as we were then, had rights. We were human beings, and the law protected us in most states. In fact, when I was born, I believe every state of the union, when I was born, protected my life. Even if I hadn't been born in New York, it was not open season on me. And it would have been a crime had I been aborted. Now, mind you, that doesn't mean it couldn't happen because people commit crimes all the time. People had abortions back then, and they murdered, and they stole, and they cheated on their wives. They did all kinds of fun stuff, most of which were illegal and remain illegal. Because oddly enough, the fact that people violate the law was not seen as reason to abolish the law in most cases. So, like, for instance, if I blew somebody's brains out, right,
Yeah.
and I was arrested, it would not be a defense to me to say, well, yeah, but I blew his brains out. So the law is unjust, right? Anyway, you don't know why I blew his brains out.
There was a need there.
There was a need. He stood between me and a fortune. Or he caught me going through his stuff and, finding out all about him. Or whatever. The point is, he was in the way, he needed dying, and I died him.
Yeah, okay.
I deaded him, but good. And I'm not ashamed. Man was in the way. He was inconvenient. And one thing we know about inconvenient people is that they deserve death at the hands of anyone who considers them inconvenient. Now, of course, if two people consider each other inconvenient, this could be problematic because then it's who's quickest on the draw. But either way, it should be safe, legal, and rare. Kind of like hits put out by the mob. Well, no, think about it for a second. As long as hits are illegal, there's no regulation. I mean, any amateur can put himself out as a hitman. But if hits were legal, they could be regulated by law. There could be all kinds of guidance. Believe me, your great uncle would have understood what I'm talking about. Because as it was, I mean, he had to hire people. Well, not for hits. I'm talking about. Anyway, the point is, sometimes he had to deal with people who turned out not to be professionals. And then there are all sorts of problems because if you have an amateur do a hit, I'm not really talking specifically about hits per se, but if you have an amateur do it, there's any number of things that could go wrong, and you yourself could be implicated and tied to a crime. Whereas if it were legal, regulated by law, hitmen had an acknowledged position in society, possibly federal and state funding, then hits of this nature could be safe, legal, and rare. Do you know how many people turned to back alley hitmen? Let's say you wanted your wife offed. All right?
You're quoting Pope Francis.
What? Was he looking for a hitman?
You're using Pope Francis' metaphor. He used the hitman metaphor.
Well, he would. He's from Argentina in Perón's day. Believe me, your great uncle would have understood him on that level. But no, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And besides which, if you were to hire a hitman on your wife, who would you prefer? A seasoned professional who could off her painlessly, or some moronic thug who botched the job so that she died in pain?
That's true.
Because, see, I'll tell you something. As long as hits are illegal, there can be no decent training or supervision of hitmen.
Gotcha.
Well, I think it's very, very important. I mean, I remember before he left us, one of the complaints your great uncle had for me is that, you can't get good help these days. It used to be, he said, New York, Chicago, there were tons of real good men who knew their job, and if all else failed, you could bring somebody over from the old country who had the added advantage of not having a record, being over here, and then things went very smoothly. But he said today it's all amateurs, and he give a guy a gun, he thinks he's a torpedo. It takes training, it takes understanding of the job, it takes craftsmanship. I mean, think back to Florence in the 1400s, speaking of Italians. Assassins then were considered themselves artists. Now, it was still illegal, but they were a very behind the times superstitious bunch. So again, I have to call on everyone we know, on you, on everybody, to join me in fighting to making gang hits safe, legal, and rare.
Safe, legal, and rare.
Murder in general should be safe, legal, and rare.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that if a person decides, and possibly after consultation with his clergyman and other members of the family, that somebody needs removing, and I can think of several families where they could really consult on these sorts of things. Your own once upon a time, although now you tell me loose lips sink ships, so we don't do that anymore. Yeah, well, that would be the first time you told me that. Anyway, the point is, there are a lot of families where you could discuss this quite openly. They don't have the same inhibitions that you've developed over the past several years. They could talk. They're not prudish, and they could bring this stuff out in the open and discuss it carefully, rationally, etc. So the head of the family could say, "I get it. The old man needs to snuff it," and then they would hire a real professional, well trained, adequately supervised, adequately remunerated. The difficult person could be removed for everyone's benefit, including his own. Safe, legal, rare. That's how hits and murder in general should be.
All right, Charles. Where do we go from here?
Coney Island.
Okay.
I feel like a hot dog. But failing that, well, where do we go as in the world we live in, the post Roe v. Wade world?
Yes.
Well, as all the world knows, a couple days ago, on June 24th, 2022, a date which will live in infamy, according to all sorts of loudmouth people, Roe versus Wade was struck down. And the pro-abortion people gnashed their teeth and wailed in the outer darkness and attacked in an insurrection in the Arizona Capitol. Can't have it both ways. You can't say it was a mostly peaceful protest if January 6th, 2021 wasn't. But then if that was an insurrection, then so was the attack on the state capitol in Arizona. So sort your lies out and get back to me, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, whatever the deal, everyone's getting upset on their side. On our side, there's a lot of jubilation, and that jubilation is to a degree warranted. But let's bear in mind what Roe v. Wade was and what it wasn't. Roe v. Wade was basically the arrogation to the Supremes, although Diana Ross abstained from voting. It was an arrogation by the court to themselves of the creation of a quote unquote right of privacy in the Constitution, which had never been seen or noticed by anybody else before. They made it up. It was a very bad piece of judicial procedure, and it was on that basis and that basis alone, not morals, not anything else, that the Supreme Court has struck down. Interestingly, none of the justices in that court that brought it in were women. Now there are quite a few chicks on the court, including one who voted for the overturning. Now, what this did was it removed the Supreme Court and the judiciary from the question and returned it to the political sphere, which arguably, talking strictly from a constitutional ground, is where it belonged in the first place, because these are not federal matters, they're state matters. Well, now we have an issue where roughly half the states are very all abortion all the time, and the other half, have varying amounts of protection for the unborn, ranging from complete or almost complete to partial. Interestingly, the infanticidal states tend to be the ones that are decaying in terms of livability, infrastructure, economy, and so forth. And the ones, there are exceptions both ways, but by and large, it's true. Whereas the ones that are infant safe tend to be on the up and up economically, in terms of livability, culture, etc., which is interesting. I don't say there's a causal connection on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's probably a good thing for a state not to be run by stupid morons. I think that's probably an advantage, and not just in this area, but in general. A state that's well run is better run than one that isn't.
Generally, that's true.
Usually, yeah. So, there's a lot of stupid stuff being said about Roe v. Wade. But what it really does, about the end of it, rather, what it really does is that once again, it opens it up for what the civics teachers are pleased to call democracy, which means to say that whether or not a state has abortion and how much now becomes the responsibility of the citizens of that state and the creatures that claim to be their servants in their respective state capitals. So, where do we go from here? Well, several possibilities. I can assure you that the anti-abortion forces will, for the most part, stay on the right side of the law. I don't know that that's true with the other side. And what I'm afraid is that the other side, taking a clue from the stupidity of the morons in the summer of 2020 hot burning love, the mostly peaceful protests, I'm afraid they'll do it again.
Yeah, I mean, I went to church on Friday, and it was broken window.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, see, that's funny too, because when you consider that very few members of the Catholic hierarchy really did anything effective in terms of fighting abortion down through the years, a few did, but most didn't. They hid behind the seamless garment of Cardinal Benedict. So it's really kind of unfair that Catholic churches should be attacked. But if they attacked evangelical or black Protestant churches, they get beaten up. So, usually cowards go for the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
You won't find a bully go up to someone his own size and say, "Let's fight."
No.
That's not how it happens. So we'll see what happens.
That's why there's a bunch of people scared about going to church, blah, blah, blah. I said, nah, these people are cowards. They're going to do it in the middle of the night.
No, and if they do, so what? I mean, if you get, all I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you're ever attacked going to Mass, hit back as hard as you can. Not for your sake, but as a teaching moment.
As a teaching moment. Like, you don't get to do this, and you're not going to be doing this again.
No, bad touch. Bad boy gets hurt. Bad boy gets kicked in the rear. So we cannot allow lawlessness to erupt. We cannot allow ourselves to be victims. Look at what happened in Canada over the last summer, over what turned out to be a completely fictional hoax. It turned out there were no large, unmarked graveyards of Indian children abused by the Catholic Church. But there was still 25 Catholic churches burned over this crap, inspired by that worthless piece of garbage, Justine Trudeau, who now is just, she doesn't even say oops. What a worthless windbag she is. I'll tell you, because there's so many people in this world in charge that worthless windbag applies to. I'm not saying it's bad being a worthless windbag. Being a worthless windbag is a lifestyle choice like any other. All I can say is that if murder was kept safe, legal, and rare, we would have fewer worthless windbags in charge.
All right, let's take it back a notch. We've got your blood's up, which makes for a great episode, and I'm excited.
Oh, just thinking of Justine Trudeau always makes me want to break something.
Let's take it
I
back.
can see his stupid little face.
We'll do a little break, memes of production, state of the week, and then we'll have a nice relevant question where we can get back into it. A question from Anita. Okay.
I'll just say this much about that, though.
Okay.
The next time I hear some idiot say the Catholic Church is restricting their freedom to be sluts or to be baby daddies, that's the thing that really gets me too. Let me say one other thing. The pro-life struggle in states where abortion is banned or limited does have to focus on some other things. One of them is forcing the fathers to take responsibility financially for their children. And today, with DNA, which is an utter godsend, guess what, stud? You play, you pay.
Right. Well, I've seen that on pro-abort poster signs, and
I
was like, yeah, let's go, let's do it.
I agree. Right? Listen, everything the pro-aborts are saying in certain areas, I agree 100% with.
Yeah.
Men ought to be forced legally to take responsibility for their bastard offspring. Check. I'm with you, honey.
Yeah.
Second, the often proclaimed sex strike by chicks, good. Good. This is a great thing for you. All right. Number one, you won't be acting like sluts anymore. Number two, you won't be treated like play toys by idiot morons. That'll be great. And number three, you'll find out that self-respect really does feel good. It'll be great being able to look at yourself as a human being in your own right, who doesn't derive her importance from being some idiot who doesn't think you're worth marrying to use as a recreational toy. So I'm all for that as well. Oh, and one other thing. Barbara Streisand and Cher, who said they were going on a sex strike.
Don't flatter yourselves, honey.
What's that?
I said don't flatter yourselves.
Well, no. Au contraire. Maybe they'll start leaving me alone. But no, I think that I think that this is wonderful. I think that the poor old guys in the retirement village in Malibu will now be able to sleep safely at night, free from molestation by elderly hags. Can you imagine women of that age making an announcement like that?
I guess, it's so strange. Perhaps that's one of the most grotesque things. It's where, I guess it's kind of plays into the thing that you said, that the generation that grew old without growing up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Okay, honey, I realize you've been a slut longer than most people have been alive. I get that. But please, don't parade it. Imagine, if you will, a woman of such stature parading her charms will be discreet in a bikini. You would beg her to cover up. You would absolutely beg her to cover up, would you not?
Okay.
And so I can only tell all the elderly sex symbols of my generation, Grandma, no.
Okay. All right. Let's let's bring it back. We're
Are
gonna
you
do
okay?
memes of production. No, I'm
We
just kind of managing, right? Like you're kind of like
well, we
in
did bring.
you're in volcano mode right now, so we're just gonna.
What do you mean? I think Barbara Streisand and Cher going on a sex strike annoys me far less than Justine Trudeau's worthless face.
Okay.
Now, you know what? He could go on a sex strike, and I'd be all for it.
Okay. I hope Newsom goes on a sex strike too. By the way,
Oh
um,
gosh,
that'd be.
Newsom is like the American Justine. You know, the same sort of slimy, almost handsome face, but slimy. You know, the good looking, only gross.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's funny. It's a thin line sometimes for some people.
Yeah. I know what you mean. All right.
You know we're actually going to be raffling off Governor Newsom.
Oh yeah. Tell us more.
Oh no, it's just been decided. Uh, First prize is 1 week in Sacramento with Governor Newsom. Second prize is 2 weeks in Sacramento with Governor Newsom, and third prize is 3 weeks with Governor Newsom. But all expenses paid by Governor Newsom.
Okay.
I'll have you know that I filled out a lot of tickets for this thing in the names of Barbara Streisand and Cher. Take that.
All right. So a recap of a lot of comments that people made. Last week was a really, really special episode. If you haven't seen it yet, it was a tribute to Charles's dad, and I don't think
Would have
Charles.
loved to have seen this day, by the way.
Indeed. Um. So everyone last episode said it was the best episode. I don't think you've ever done a show that elicited such an overwhelming positive response. So
Nobody called me a daddy's boy.
no, nobody called you a daddy's boy.
Said you're hiding behind your dad's reputation.
Wow, no. All right, time for the memes of production.
Nationalize the memes of production
for the common good. All right. All right. Let's see. We've got 2 memes from Joseph. Let's see if I can bring those up in a good order here. Oh, here we go. So this is from 2 episodes back, I think. It's not vampirism, it's hemophilosis.
That's right. And I think it's about time people understood this. Look at poor Christopher Lee. Do you realize the kind of discrimination he had to go through? You got blood on your fangs. Ooh, you're a vampire. Ooh. Yeah. Stuff it.
Hema, the middle ground between vegan and paleo.
Also true. Also true. I mean, it's just another way of eating.
Let's see what else we got here. I think we've got one from Kevin. Let me see what he put up here. Yes, Guy Fawkes, the last man to enter Parliament with honest intentions.
Well, that may be debatable, but not by much. It's true. And of course, the other thing with Guy Fawkes that always cracks me up was V for Vendetta, making him into a symbol of freedom without mentioning why he died. You know, the whole religion thing, which would be like a film using Dr. King as a symbol without mentioning that whole race thing. But no, the last man to enter Parliament with an honest intention. Fair to say. Although I don't think it's entirely true. I think that honor would actually go to Charles I, who went into Parliament to arrest some morons that needed arresting and fled.
Okay. All right, one more. This was submitted from you, Charles. One of your friends gave this to you.
A friend of mine sent it, and we thought it was a worthwhile one because it's been all over the internet.
We tried a Christian society run by the rich. It was called the Dark Ages for a reason.
Okay, there's kind of several layers of stupid here.
Yeah.
Number one, that's a picture of the martyrdom of St. Hippolytus by the pagans. Now, I realize Hippolytus, rather, Hippolytus, St. Hippolytus. I understand that if you're stupid, you don't know that. And I understand that being stupid is big with mean people. Now, what we have today is a non-Christian society run by the rich. My little munchkins, I'm going to tune you into something. All societies are run by the rich. Yes, it's true, my little darlings. Those of you fresh out of your gender studies classes and your little academic stomping grounds, I'm sorry, my little munchkins. If you don't have wealth and you don't have power in the given society you're in, you will count for very little. Even if you've graduated from Notre Dame with a degree in leathercraft.
Hey, you remember Occupy Wall Street?
Oh, do I ever? Do I ever? There was Occupy Wall Street. Occupy LA, you remember, did manage to absorb the City Hall Park for a while.
Yeah.
But what I thought was funny about that was that then they started whining that the homeless were infiltrating. Yeah. They came to protest for the people. Oh yes. But then when the actual people who wanted the free food and shelter descended on them, no. Do you remember that? What a bunch of idiots. This wasn't for the homeless. This is political. Little munchkin, the homeless are political.
Dude, that maybe the homeless actually protect us and insulate us from that kind of stupidity now. Maybe that's the one benefit of the homeless community.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, Occupy Skid Row. Good luck, pal. You know what was even funnier to me? It was Occupy Palm Beach. Now, I'll tell you why I found that funny. Because Palm Beach, Florida, it's a very rich place with a lot of liberals there. The Kennedy compound was there. Where the one Kennedy cousin tried to rape that chick some years ago with Uncle Teddy looking on kind of drunkenly, as he did very frequently at everything he looked at. When you're drunk most of the time, you tend to look at things drunkenly. It's funny. Whether it's a rape or a bird, Anyhow, no, so they decided it was going to be Occupy Palm Beach. But as is the case in liberal wealthy enclaves like Palm Beach or Beverly Hills, the popo don't put up with no garbage from the peons. Remember what I said about the rich always really running the show?
Yeah.
It's just the nature of things. So they tried to do Occupy Palm Beach and were met with batons and pistols. So what they had to do was occupy an empty lot in West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Which is across the bridge from Palm Beach.
Yeah.
And when I would drive into Palm Beach, I would see the Occupy people on West Palm Beach, and I'd always roll down my window and honk my horn in support and cheer and say, "Occupy West Palm," which they kind of nervously waved back at me because they couldn't tell if I was being insulting or complimentary.
Well, it's very similar to what is it? The Summer of Love, right? With the riots going on. I don't know how quick you probably weren't watching the local coverage, but because you're probably in Austria, but local coverage quite clearly showed that the mostly peaceful protesters, they wanted to go to Beverly Hills, and they were trying to cross Sepulveda, going north of Sepulveda. They couldn't do it.
They couldn't
No.
No, bad touch. And for that matter, in '92, I remember when the rioters, the Beverly Hills PD had orders to shoot to kill if they crossed the line.
Yeah.
A couple of them crossed the line and pop, pop. And then the mob dispersed. Isn't that funny? And you never hear about that. If it was LAPD, you would have heard about it till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But if it's Beverly Hills PD, you don't hear about it because it's Beverly Hills. And nobody has ever accused Beverly Hills of being a stronghold of Christianity. So, my little munchkins, a Christian society run by the rich is not something you've ever experienced. So what you need to do is put both thumbs together, keeping them out of convenient orifice. Close your mouth, shut your eyes, and just stay like that. Don't do memes. Don't do memes that actually say, you may say that you may think they're saying something clever, like that's what's called the Dark Ages. What you're really saying is, to anyone who knows anything, I'm a big stupid moron, and I'm never going to have any meaning in life. And you know what, kids? You won't. Because you see, the problem for our little munchkins and anti-fats and the rest of them is that they're tools, they're pawns. And no one respects tools. No, nobody, even if they use them like a hammer. Have you ever picked up a hammer you've used? It may have given you years of good service and said, Hammer, I deeply respect you.
I've never respected a hammer I've ever picked up.
No?
I said, hammer,
How about,
I'm going to
yeah.
use you.
How about a saw? Saw, I really respect what you're doing. I love your work. I think you've got a lot to offer to the future of carpentry. Have you ever said this?
I've never said that.
So you've never had a deep, abiding respect for things you use?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I would think that our little twitlets need to understand that that's how the people they are unwittingly work for think of them.
All right. We got another meme. I forgot to show you this one, Charles. It's from Twitter, so I'm going to share screen so you can enjoy with everyone else.
Oh, boy.
And let me...
I feel like Count Floyd in Second City TV. Count Floyd will be watching too, kiddies.
Here we go. Fray Lucas Romero says, when Don Franchini gives Elon Musk advice on how to run his business. And the headline being, Elon Musk reportedly issued an ultimatum to Tesla staff. Return to the office or quit.
Well, that's pretty... Yeah, I can see you saying that. Unlike Elon Musk, you wouldn't have let them leave.
Yeah, you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
That's right. Not from the Tumbler House Tower. We're all happy here.
But, I mean, this is what I was trying... This was kind of my umbrage with sort of the old-timers and the family business is, how to get things done. It's like, well, guns, money, but, and what's that one gentleman said? You can get more with a smile, with a kind word and a gun than just a kind word.
That's right.
But
Your granduncle used to say that to me when I was a boy.
I feel like charisma goes a long way. How to what's the Carnegie book? How to have friends,
make friends and influence people.
There we go. See, they're forgetting that. See, you don't need to be the richest man in the world. You just need to influence the richest man in the world. You see? It all started at that Tumbler House party. Did you notice that? When after that party, he said, "Seize the means of production." Clearly, I rubbed off on him.
Well, that's true. You did have a certain amount of. I imagine that Don Giuseppe would have looked at his children's pictures and said they were really, really nice kids.
Yeah.
It would be terrible if anything would have happened to them. That would be. I mean, he was an influencer before his time, before they even had the phrase.
Wow. Definitely an influencer.
He was an influencer, and I can tell you that he certainly influenced a lot of people in both back home and in the LA area, and I will just say, I know that you usually don't want me to go into this area, but I will just say that in all the years I knew your great uncle, I never knew him not to have some kind of influence in the immediate area.
Okay. That sounds That sounds true.
But he would have, I think, taken a little bit of a harder line, maybe. I mean, not necessarily too rough, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Or as the old saying used to be, why break legs when you can break a finger? But the well,
It's true.
that's kinder if you think about it.
It is.
Yeah. Also, it leaves room to improve.
Exactly.
You shoot all your guns off at once, you don't have any ammunition.
That's right. All right. All right. A couple more comments, some fun comments from people.
All
David
right.
says, Vinny, I solved the mystery of the 13th floor. They actually made a cartoon about it called Troll Hunter Tales of Arcadia. You are the troll hunter and have trolls locked up on the 13th floor, which leads to an underground troll world. That solves the riddle, and Charles can't remember it because he is unable to. Charles?
All right. There are two problems with this, okay? Firstly, if that were true, there wouldn't be any trolls on Twitter. And it just erupts with them constantly, like a nose blower during COVID. And the second is that it's not true that I can't remember going up to the 13th floor. I can remember it. I just have to put my mind to it. That's all. It's very easy. I went
Yeah.
up to it. Last summer when I was back. Last May when a couple of months ago I came back and I was going up to the 15th floor to go to have a quick sit down in the meditation garden because I was feeling a little full of glazed donuts. And there was the 13, which again pops up from time to time. It stopped, and I did not push. I was the only one in the elevator, and I had not pushed 13, but it stopped. And the door opened, and then I'm sorry, what were we talking about again?
I was reading Don from Florida's comments about the 13th
Oh,
floor. He
I
says
see.
he says I hear the 13th floor of the Tumbler Tower phase 2 will include dedicated vampiric sleeping facilities.
As it should. An end to discrimination in sleeping facilities at the Tumbler House Tower.
Yes. That's a good way to put it. End of discrimination.
That's right. That's right. Do you realize something terrible thinking about the recent court decision? Something similar happened in 1954
Okay.
in Brown versus the Topeka Board of Education. The Supreme Court took away the segregation rights that they had granted in Homer versus in Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896.
Wow. But that was settled. That was sacred settled law.
It was until they decided it wasn't. And so the segregation rights were taken away.
Wow. So
What? This
such
was a right that had been a law. I mean, one of the things we're talking about, President Hindenburg was going on in his speech, if you can call it that, about how the Supreme Court had taken away a right that had been part of the law for 50 years. Well, segregation rights had been part of U.S. law for 60 years. Or is that right? No, 58. Anyway, 8 years longer than abortion rights. The Supreme Court stripped the citizens of this country of their segregation rights.
Okay.
Black people could no longer be put in their place, a right that had been given the American populace by the Supreme Court. They couldn't do it anymore. Isn't that terrible? I'm sure President Hindenburg had been, he wasn't around at the time, but I'm sure he would have protested, given his logic.
I don't think so,
Segregation,
Charles.
segregation should be safe, legal, and rare. What?
I see what you're doing.
What? Look, those three things should be the hallmark of anything and everything anybody feels like doing. Safe, legal, rare. Poisoning children at a campground. should be safe, legal, rare. Mass murder at a media convention should be safe, legal, rare. You know, somebody going with a submachine gun into the annual Golden Globes or something. Safe, legal, rare.
Yeah, well, no, I actually was thinking about that when it came to looting, because like in San
That too
Francisco,
should be. That
right?
is safe, legal, and
That
rare.
that actually, yeah, if it's under $900 or something, right?
Under $900 is good to hook. Now, unfortunately, the owners of the chains don't understand this, and so they're pulled out. And a lot of people have complained. A lot of would-be looters have been very upset, not just customers. People who had actually perhaps planned their budget for a whole month
On
about the
looting.
amount of, yeah. And now where are they?
They planned their looting out. They had a looting schedule where.
Yes, of course. It's a budget. Well, no, I mean, stop and think about it. You think you're going to make 900 in looting in the month because that's legal. So you get 900 from the fence, and then you plan your expenditures and all that
Oh,
based
from
on
the
the
fence.
900.
Okay, never mind. It makes sense. I didn't think about the fence.
Yeah, well, the fence is very important. So you're gonna loot the stuff. You're gonna loot 900 bucks worth of stuff, turn it into the fence, get your money, and then spend it on whatever you spend it on. But you've made your budget for the month, right? So then you go to the Walmart to knock out 900, and they're closed. There's nothing there. Where are you supposed to get the $900 now?
It's a shame.
Well, see, this is what no one's thinking about. I mean, these greedy, greedy chain stores, all they can ever think of is making a profit. What about the little guy? Okay.
We're always thinking about the little guy.
Yeah, but not much. No, but I mean, this is an important question. If you make your living through looting and suddenly there's nothing to loot, what do you got going for you? What are you supposed to do? Get a job? Employment itself should be safe, legal, and rare. And it is in large parts of our country.
All right, are you ready for State of the Week?
I are.
All right.
Sweden.
That's not okay. No, in the United States. I know some people are confused whether the U.S. is in the EU. But
That was my joke. I said that Macron had. I said that Macron had condemned the reversal of Roe v. Wade, and that he had called for the suspension of the U.S. membership of the EU and an end of subsidies to the American economy by the EU. And then at the same time, the European People's Party and the European Parliament in Strasbourg had expelled the Republican Party from its ranks. And the responses I got were interesting. I mean, a number of people caught that it was a joke. One guy wrote into me that we should never join the EU in the first place, which I'm sure is true. You know,
I love that. That's a fun one.
I
You can't be mad at that guy. I don't know. I
no
agree. You know
no
what I mean? Like, yeah,
no, I'm
yeah.
not mad at him at all. I just think God, his kind are on the voting rolls. You know, we need more people like that. I bet he's a college professor. Probably knows a lot of stuff.
Probably, honestly.
Probably an academic, or maybe he works in government. He might be a State Department official.
All those make sense. All right, State of the Week, North Dakota.
Oh, North Dakota. Well, you think you've got me stumped, and boy, are you wrong. North Dakota is a fascinating state. For one thing, it was the northern half of the Dakota Territory. As you might well guess, the southern half is South Dakota, but they were a single territory before they became states. And their capital was in Yankton, which is now the extreme southern end of South Dakota.
Wow.
But that was the territorial capital for both Dakotas. When they became separate states, Bismarck became the North Dakota capital, and Pierre was South Dakota. So what do I know about North Dakota? Well, once again, it's a state I've driven through a number of times. I have spent some time in Fargo, been to church there, and yes, they do sound that way. There's kind of in that part of the state, there's an influence from Minnesota. As you go to the north ends of the state, you run across a lot of Métis, who are the French Indian mixtures, and they have a wonderful shrine to St. Anne at a place called Turtle Mountain. A lot of Indians in North Dakota, including my favorite tribe, the supposed Welsh Indians, the Mandans. But they have Hidatsas, Arakaras, and a lot of others. Sioux, I think they've got there. No, they have in South Dakota. The Bismarck, North Dakota is an interesting town, and I've certainly enjoyed looking through the capital, state capitol, and the state museum. I've been to Mandan, not a lot there. I mean, it's not uninhabited by any means, but there just isn't a great deal of stuff in Mandan. Many years ago, in a place called Powers Lake, North Dakota, there was a trad compound called the Shrine of Our Lady of the Prairies. It was run by a priest of Swedish descent, or Norwegian, anyway, Scandinavian. Very nice man, but he died some years ago. And after his time, the operation kind of fell apart. But they were a growing concern for some decades, and they had an interesting and very folksy newspaper they put out called the Merry Faithful that went all over the country. North Dakota is, I've been to Grand Forks, North Dakota. It was Great Falls, I think. And I was there in the midst of literally a grasshopper plague. There were grasshoppers everywhere. It was the most bizarre thing. I've never seen anything like it. And they got in the grill, into the engine. They were everywhere. And of course, driving through the street was crunch, crunch, crunch. It's pretty gross. But the hotel I stayed at was downtown, and the old guy who was there told me true stories of the Dust Bowl, which he had lived through. And they were very long, and they weren't exciting, but he was happy to share. And after telling me a lot about the Dust Bowl in a very monotone delivery, he then told me that many years later, he and a cousin went back to their aunt's place, which had survived the Dust Bowl. They went into the attic and opened it up, and out poured a lot of dust. So North Dakota was an integral part of the Dust Bowl. North Dakota also gave us two important figures. One was William Lemke, who in 1936 ran for the National Union Party against both FDR and Alf Landon, the Republican. He carried no votes, but the reason why he's important to alternate history is that he was supported by Father Charles Coulombe, Dr. Townsend of the Townsend Insurance Scheme, and Gerald L.K. Smith, who had run the Huey Long organizations outside Louisiana. When Huey Long was killed, the feds moved into Louisiana, and in return for not prosecuting the Long clan, the Longs withdrew. They cut off their support from the Shore Wealth Clubs and all that outside Louisiana. And Gerald L.K. Smith had been running them, so he continued to. But the Longs were out of it. Of course, they immediately began to weaken and die, especially without Huey. So basically, the Longs cut a deal with the federal government. As long as they were left alone in Louisiana, they would not. They would give up all influence outside the state. And so, the waning power of the Shore Wealth Clubs and the remnants of Huey Long's extra Louisiana organization, Father Coughlin's National Union of Social Justice, and Dr. Townsend's Townsend Scheme people, they united to form the National Union, which ran William Lemke and was really toasted at the polls. The other great North Dakotan.
Okay. How was Lemke connected to North Dakota again? Was he like the governor?
Was no, he was a senator and was a native of North Dakota.
Okay.
The other great native of North Dakota, who grew up there in a German-speaking family, German was his first language, was a wonderful musician. He played champagne music, and his name was Lawrence Welk, native of North Dakota.
Okay. Go
That's
on.
it. That's all I got.
Okay. I thought there was gonna be some story or something. Okay.
Well, no, I mean Lawrence Welk. You've never heard of him?
Like no, I haven't.
Well, that's too bad for you because Lawrence Welk was a big band leader, and then he made the jump to television in the from radio into the 50s and 60s, and he had a long-running television program on CBS. They called his not just his band, but the singers and a lot of other performers, including the King sisters, whom you may have heard of, and eventually the King family. These were all part of his musical family. And he was a very devout Catholic, and he demanded the highest standards of behavior from the members of his musical family. And if they were bad, they were out. He ran a tight ship in the morality department. But as
Good.
I say, he was very, very devout. And to this day, for those of us who were alive in the 60s and 70s and saw the show, he used to broadcast from the Hollywood Palladium in Hollywood, even in my day. And when you drive past it, it's still there. But in those days, it was a cardboard sign of Lawrence Welk with an automatic hand and the baton like this
Mm.
to remind you that you were driving by Lawrence Welk's recording studio at the Palladium. So he was beloved of old ladies everywhere. And he played a mix of dance music and sort of tamed contemporary tunes. He'd take rock music and turn it into big band music, easy listening, which, as you can imagine, sometimes annoyed some of the rockers, but he didn't care. Uh, and the show would consist not just of musical numbers and dancing, though they had that, but also sort of musical sketches based on the topic of the given song. And they have Christmas specials, Halloween specials, Easter specials, and so on. So there's a big chunk of Americana when I was a boy and before. PBS recently, well, 20 years ago, but they still show them, packaged a number of his programs and showed them again. And I was able to watch them again for the first time since I was a boy. And I got to tell you, I really enjoyed them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Entertainment, the master of the champagne music, that great Catholic and tremendous golf player, Mr. Lawrence Welk, North Dakota native.
Hmm. All right. Time for the questions. And as promised, we'll go back to the topic at hand. We've got a question from Anita. And Anita says, Dear Vincent and Charles, Happy Feast of the Sacred Heart, Nativity of John the Baptist, and Overturning Roe Day.
Indeed.
I write this on the day that the Supreme Court issued Dobbs versus Jackson, overturning Roe v. Wade. Now Moloch worship is no longer enshrined as an allegedly constitutionally guaranteed right, and the battleground shrinks to the states intent on keeping it going.
So,
Happily, my adopted home state of Idaho has an anti-Moloch law that was passed in anticipation of Roe being overturned and takes
hmm.
effect 30 days after the occurrence of that event. I'd like to ask Charles, as an observer on the ground in Central Europe, what are the Europeans saying about the Dobbs decision? Does he think Dobbs will have implications elsewhere in the world? I'd also like to ask Vincent, as an observer on the ground in my native state of California, what are you seeing in California as a response to Dobbs? What's the Catholic Church in California doing about Dobbs and the pro Moloch backlash? Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, there were a few countries. I mean, the communist bloc, abortion was legal when I was a boy. And when I was Russia, Soviet Russia was the first country to legalize abortion in 1918. It was illegal everywhere until then. Then things loosened in Scandinavia. In Britain, Parliament made it legal in 1967. Outside of Ireland, it has never, to my knowledge, been given a referendum. But the United States bringing it in was a big, 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 big push for it all over the world. And in Western Europe, in country after country, the Catholic hierarchies in countries that were ruled by the Christian Democrats, like Austria, Italy, Germany, all declared that they wouldn't fight it. In Canada, Pierre Trudeau, the worthless father of the worthless Justine, told the bishops of Canada in '69 that he intended to bring it in, but he wouldn't do it if they would oppose it. But being slime buckets, they said that they didn't want to oppose it and it wasn't up to them, and the only thing they cared about was getting their money. No, they didn't say that, but it was true anyway. So what happened was that he brought it into Canada. It's too bad his wife didn't practice it, I suppose. Then we wouldn't be worrying about Justine now. However, it's how is it being seen? Well, for conservatives and believing Catholics, it's joyful. For the others, it's fearful. The slimy Boris Johnson of London was very much upset, and he said it remains a right of in Britain. It's funny. It shows you how stupid foreign leaders and a lot of foreigners are, in that they're somehow under the impression that American law affects them. It actually doesn't. I know this is a hard concept for walnut-brained morons in charge to get through their little heads, but in fact, Roe v. Wade and its overturning and its enforcing on the people only dealt with the United States. It did not actually alter law anywhere else. But people get confused because they don't know and stuff. In Austria, there was a small demonstration of Thanksgiving in front of our American embassy in Vienna. I was invited to it, but unfortunately it started at 7 and I was invited at 6:55. There was no way I could get up there from here then. I would have loved to, though. There was an after party. But serious, and I just didn't feel like going to an after party when I hadn't been to the actual event.
Right.
So anyway, so I would say that it's seen as a sign of hope for a lot of people here, and a sign for gnashing their teeth and blowing their brains out for others.
Okay. For
How's
California,
it in the Golden State?
the Golden State, yeah. I mean,
Has Newsom got on a sex strike?
no.
Too bad.
He said something very stupid and very, but not stupid. He said abortion will never be outlawed or something like that. It was almost like a challenge, right? Like it was like
Well,
that, that's how I felt. You know what I mean? Like it was so presumptuous, and I felt like that was stupid on a sort of I don't know what you'd say, like a gamesmanship level.
Yeah, but
Like
don't forget, he knows how stupid most Californians are.
Like two sports teams are playing against each other. You don't goad the other side. Like you don't do something that really is gonna people can really hang on to as a motivation for
But what if you're stupid?
Well, that's clearly the case here.
What if you're a big fat moron and you're a governor? What if you're an idiot who really should not be allowed out without adult supervision?
I feel like this has completely galvanized all of the pro-life groups. um, especially in California, because I feel like we have a really active pro-life, uh, you know, uh, pro-life area in California. We have several great. I know Live Action has a lot of stuff going on here. There's also Vox Vitae, which actually operates out of Alhambra. Um, and we regularly go to Sacramento. Um, but obviously, with Roe v. Wade like standing, that doesn't mean a fraction of what it would mean now.
Well, what it would mean now is that if you can somehow get a majority of Californians to oppose abortion,
It,
then you can force the assembly to get rid of it.
and one of the things, um, I have to admit, emotionally, I got the text on Friday morning from my sister about it. I just woke up to it, and she says that. I have to admit, my first reaction was, wow. Everyone's going to be shrinking. There's going to be blood on the streets because you can't just take that away from the devil and have him go quietly.
Well, that's very true.
But my second immediate reaction, because it happened on the Feast of Sacred Heart, is, wow, God, uh, God is in charge. Um,
The Sacred Heart and Saint Jean Baptiste,
yeah. Well, yes, of course.
and that is a very rare confluence. It doesn't happen very often. It
uh,
really doesn't.
but I feel like what I'm motivated to do. I feel like the thing to do now. I mean, the game is on, honestly. Like, because people can't regularly travel to DC and then like lobby the Supreme Court. Like, I feel like there was so much energy, like, in spite of that big giant obstacle. And I think now that that's gone, that's like kind of like a positive Pandora's box, if you will.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it means you've got 50 different separate situations.
And the thing that you've always preached, local activism, local
Yeah.
activism, local activism, get active in your state, get active in your state. Now it's there. I remember Vonde Radio was like, what can you do? Like, he always has these poignant questions, right? He's like, what can you do other than, this and this? Now the game is on.
Well, and there's a lot you could actually do at the state level.
Yeah.
Making Newsom's life difficult would be good.
Yeah.
That little moron's mouth needs to shut. Uh,
The
being voted out of office would be good.
Yeah, I'm going to leverage this into a different question, a question that I kind of ended with last week.
Huh.
It's a really important one. I'm going to move that up here.
About my dad?
No, well, I kind of asked what your dad would do in this situation. So this question's from
Okay.
Cal. He says, "Greetings and good vibes to the maestro of mackerel Don Vincenzo and his loyal consigliere Charles Coulombe. As an introvert, I have been pushing myself to try to be more involved with my local community, but I have been having some trouble doing so. Working full time and visiting my ailing grandmother have been at the top of my priorities as of late. However, I've been wanting to join my local chapter of the Italian Catholic Federation since hearing the discussion of the third place on Off the Menu. My issue is this: how can one get involved in the local community while working a full time job and keeping one's familial commitments? Do you or Charles have any advice on how to manage obligations such as these while ensuring that there is still time set aside for community involvement?"
Well, yeah. Do your best to try to merge them. In other words, like take my father. He had a full-time job and he had 2 sons. So what did he do? Well, he was very active in our scout troop. So that meant on that level he spent a lot of time with us. He was active in the French Council of the Knights of Columbus that we had in Los Angeles, mostly French Canadian. He would take me to their meetings.
Yeah.
Partly so I could practice my French, partly so we'd have some time together. When we were living in New York, he was a member of the Civil War Round Table, and he always took my brother to that. And that's when my brother got his great interest in the Civil War, because of He knew my brother, I mean, met people who were amazing experts in the war at that time, now long dead, but he remembers meeting them because Dad would take him to this stuff. So I would definitely see how much you can pull together of your family and other commitments. Like, for instance, your grandmother, take her to the Italian Catholic Federation, especially if she's Italian. Uh, she might very well enjoy herself. You know, the average age at the ICF is like 98. No, that's not true. Don't say things like that. But seriously, she could very likely meet other people there she enjoyed being with.
Mm.
And if she doesn't get out that much, that would be a tremendous boon to her and to you.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is that, well, like for a long time when I was living in LA, I was a member of the LA Breakfast Club. That meets every morning at 7:30 a.m. And oh, I hated getting up at 6 to go down there because I'd have to give myself an hour to 40 minutes before the morning rush started.
Yeah.
And it made getting up Wednesdays was hell, but I loved the meetings, and the breakfast was good too. And the one downside was the coffee, which was pretty weak.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have three bits of advice. Number one, for Knights of Columbus, as an example, like I've had to, like I was a lot more active before I was married, and since married, I haven't been able to attend a meeting. But also they're kind of getting back in the swing of things post COVID. But sort of my intention is um, not going to the general meetings, which is every month, or if you're an officer, bi-monthly. Go to the actual event and volunteer and participate in that manner. That's what I intend to do. They always have a big fireworks sale, so I'm hoping to go to that. Um, the other thing is, what was I going to say? Um, well,
Well,
the
no,
other thing. Oh,
go
what?
ahead. No, go ahead.
The obvious thing, the biggest thing that occurred to me too, um, is the pro life thing, because obviously you have to. So many times you can't go to the actual function, or maybe they're going somewhere and you just have obligations, right? But I'm gonna partition off a lot of my weekly church donation to pro life groups now, because I feel like there's nothing more important, honestly, in California than getting these people some funding. We just need to get the ball rolling.
But
The thing, yeah.
don't you want to pay your church for being there when you needed them during COVID?
Well, that's part of the thing, right? I do. I do. Well, I actually switched churches because of that, and now I pay the church that was there for me, and I no longer pay the churches that cut everybody off. So that's what
Oh,
happens.
okay. Let me get this straight. Let me get this straight, Mr. Ingrate. The churches that would have been there for you if they could have been, you give them bupkis. And the one that gave you the sacraments during the worst, darkest days, oh, they're getting your money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where's the equality in that? Yeah, can't answer that one. It's not fair.
Fair's got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it does. They have a fair at each of those parishes. I know I got sick at the IC fair one year. Anyway,
Oh man.
what? I just thought I'd mention that. No, but I think you're quite right. And I would just add to expand a little bit on what you said about go to the major events. That's the other thing. If you find that you just can't participate on a monthly or weekly basis with a given organization that you really like, but you can't do that much with them. Well, zero in on some event that you can do with them. And I mean, I'll give you an example. In Sierra Madre, California, there is a place called the British Home. That's a retirement home for British people, run by the United Empire, the United Daughters of the Empire, the United Daughters of the British Empire. So it's one of, I think, 4 homes that run throughout the United States. They're a very nice place for a lot of elderly English people. But every year they have a fair, and they sell tea and biscuits and crumpets and all sorts of secondhand things, books and really neat stuff. I think they have various things going on there. Well, I mean, I don't know anybody who's an inmate. I'm not connected to it, but I make a point when I'm in town of always going to their annual fair, just because I like what they're doing, and that's my little bit to support them. And St. Joseph's Table, when you do the Italian side of things, I know when I'm in town, I never miss St. Joseph's Table at St. Peter's Italian Church. Never. No, St. Peter's have a lot of programs, a lot of good stuff. All I can do is that annual visit, but that's what I do. Is it diocese or bishop?
Bishop. Robert McElroy, I sent you a link. timesofsandiego.com.
Here we go.
Oh, actually, wait, that's an old one. January 15th, 2022. I'm sorry. But he said that even before it was overturned.
Well, on May 29th, he pointed out that he's been very vocal in his opposition to denying Holy Communion to pro-abort Catholic politicians. He wouldn't give a religious exemption on the vaccinations. Yeah, it's kind of a gay blade, I'm afraid. Oh, and his auxiliary, James Dolan, who was one of the 14 bishops who signed the Tyler Clementi statement opposing violence and harassment against LGBTQ youth, is going to be the Bishop of Phoenix, who's replacing Bishop Olmsted. And Jamie Martin, the little Jesuit person, is very, very happy about that. Silly creature.
All right,
well.
Charles. All right.
Let's plow on.
All right, plowing on. Let's go back to let's go back to Anita, who's asks, in anticipation of the 4th of July, I also wanted to ask, what kingly executive powers, as opposed to merely nominal powers, did George III have that his current successor does not have?
What he had was he had much more of a voice in choosing the prime minister. And he had he never vetoed anything, but he exercised a great deal more behind the scenes political action. He had hoped to recover the powers of Queen Anne, which would have included presiding over the cabinet and making sure that while he wouldn't make policy, there would be no policy he would disapprove of, if you see the difference.
Yeah.
In other words, you've got a free hand in coming up with anything you want to do up to a point. Beyond that point, no.
All right. Let's see here. All right, we're gonna end on 2 questions from Vendée Radio.
Oh boy.
All right. Vendée Radio says, Charles, please, could you expound on the mythical land of Ruritania, on the Ruritanian romance as a genre? What do they say about the longings in the soul of man?
Well, Ruritania is that Eastern European quasi-semi-Balkan country that was the setting of 2 major novels in the late 19th century by Sir Anthony Hope. The Prisoner of Zenda and Rupert of Hentzau. And basically, The conceit is that an Englishman named Rudolf Rassendyll is the distant cousin of the king, the soon-to-be crowned king of Ruritania, Rudolf III, and they are related distantly through an 18th century forebear. One of his impregnated one of his. An Elfberg got in a Rassendyll. So once every generation or two in the Rassendylls, they get redheads just like the Elfbergs. So Ruritania is somewhere vaguely between Austria-Hungary and Romania and Bulgaria and so forth. The capital is Strelzau, ancient Strelzau. The one of the major hunting lodges of the monarchy is Zenda Castle, which the king's evil brother, Black Michael, uses as his headquarters. Plus, if that weren't bad enough, Rudolph, who is a bit of a drunk and a bit of a philanderer, after he's to be crowned king, and then he is to marry his cousin, the other Elfberg heiress, Princess Flavia. Now, Black Michael is the half brother of the king. He's morganatic. His mother was not royal, and he very much resents his secondary status. Into this cauldron of intrigue, young Rassendyll comes on a hunting expedition, not realizing that he and the king look exactly alike. So he strays, while hunting, he strays onto royal land, falls asleep, and he is found by two of the king's men, the young Fritz von Thalenheim and the elderly Colonel Zapt. So they say, my heavens, you look just like the king. And they take him back to a hunting lodge, and there's the king, and they get along splendidly. And then they drink. But then it turns out that the drink has been drugged. They wake up, and the king is incapable of getting himself together for the coronation. So, since Rassendyll looks just like the king, they plan to have him crowned in the king's stead. Otherwise, Black Michael will take over the country. Well, he does. But what seems easy enough becomes extremely complicated because in the meantime, the king is kidnapped. And so Rassendyll has to keep up the thing for a while longer. Meanwhile, he meets Flavia, who thinks that he's the real Rudolph. And of course, they fall in love. She not realizing that he's not the king. Well, eventually they do free the king. But this leaves Rassendyll with a terrible problem. And Black Michael is killed, and his lieutenant, Rupert of Hentzau, escapes. But he tries to convince Flavia to go off with him, but it's her duty to stay with the king, whom she does not love. And she says, ah, dear, if love were all. But love isn't. So he goes back to London, and that's the end of The Prisoner of Zenda. The sequel, Rupert of Hentzau. She has continued to send him a rose every year in token of their love. The evil Rupert of Hentzau comes back. King finds out, and Rupert of Hentzau tells the king what's going on, and there's a whole series of dramatic things. It all ends up with the king being buried as Rudolf Rassendyll, and Rassendyll being buried in the tomb as Rudolf III. And after all, he is an Elfberg illegitimately. So at the very end of the book, it's a real tear-jerking scene. It was turned into a play. The very end, von Thalenheim, the young guy, comes out and he says, she reigns alone in Ruritania now, the last of all the Elfbergs. And I will serve her and train my son to serve her, as I have done. The other day, I brought the lad to the cathedral at Strelzau, where Rassendyll lies buried amongst his forebears, the kings. And then I asked the boy if he could read the inscription on the tomb. Certainly, Father. Hic jacet Rodolphus, rex quandam in illicivitatem et semper in cordibus meus. In cordis meus, rather. Can you translate it, son? Certainly, Father. Here lies Rudolph, sometime king in this city, and always of my heart, Flavia. The boy turned to me and said, God save the Queen, Father. Yes, son. God save the Queen.
Hmm.
And that's how it ends. Well, that's the play ending. But it's a little different in the book. Always gets me a little bit teary.
Yeah.
And what is the attraction of these things? And there were a lot of others, the Groucho novels. I mean, they've done tons of these things. Well, monarchy itself. Only a monarchy, as with any other fiction, removed from the specific ones we know, so you can look at the thing itself.
Hmm.
You know, a little bit like what I did with Star Spangled Crown. By creating a monarchy in America, I was a fictional monarchy. I was able to look at monarchy in general. And it grabs the emotion, it grabs the heart. Or as my friend Michael Davis put it once in an article as to why he was a monarchist, he said, the question is not when did I become one? It's when did you stop being one?
Hmm.
Because, of course, all our fairy tales have kings and queens. And even today, we do tend to expect, although we sometimes are disappointed, a higher level of behavior from royals than we do from the scumbags we call politicians. I mean, everybody gets overwrought about a royal's divorce. We don't care about the president's divorce. We just don't.
It's very true.
Yeah. And we certainly get upset about their moral lapses in areas which wouldn't bother us at all if it happened in our own family. And that, in a weird way, is a sort of inherent monarchism. Mind you, it's the negative side of it, if you will, because we demand more out of our betters than we ourselves are capable of. Though I do like to say, when various royals who have done, shall we say, substandard things today, whether reigning or not, my answer now is look, over 100 years ago, we had a saint on a throne. And all the countries of Europe and ourselves and his, even his allies, the Germans, and most of his major politicians all slit his throat. And that was a saint. Do we deserve anything better now? Maybe Governor Newsom, maybe Justine Trudeau are the kind of worthless scumbags we should be ruled by. People who really do represent us. But I mean, think about it. Most of us are as really keyed in and in the know as President Biden. We're as qualified as for the office as Vice President Harris. We have the firm, fixed opinions of Governor Newsom, and we have the deep interior life of Justine Trudeau.
And that's why you'll be voting for Trump in 2024, right?
Only because I got to keep my promise if he runs again.
I wanted to publicly hold you
No,
accountable.
listen, I didn't say I'd like it. You know, I'm an American Solidarity Party man, but I made the promise, which I never thought would come across, but I never did. I never thought I would see this. I never thought it. Never. But I did promise that I would vote for the Orange Man if his appointees got rid of Roe v. Wade. And I didn't think they would, and I was wrong. Of course, I didn't think Putin would invade Ukraine either, and I was wrong there too. Two big wrongnesses in 2022.
One little tiny side note. I don't think we discussed this before the show. You know what was one of my favorite parts of just like sort of the discovery process of this ruling was that Judge Roberts didn't get to ruin it. I know he wanted to ruin it so badly. And it's like, sorry, you didn't get
No,
your little 15-day exception in there. I'm sorry.
so sad. Screw the pooch on that one, you worthless hypocrite. Oh,
uh,
windbag.
that felt good.
I have no use for him.
Because like we've gotten screwed so many times
By
with
him.
by him, and it's ah
And of course, he was appointed by a Republican.
yes.
Do you remember the oh gosh, what's his name? The O.J. Simpson trial?
Oh, I know Shapiro, Judge Lancito, Cato Kalin.
Yeah,
Uh,
the whole gang.
yeah.
Well, you know, at the time, what they said Judge Ito meant?
What? Well, okay, go.
Little judge.
Judge Ito means little judge.
Yeah, Judge Ito. He's a little judge. Judge Ito
Oh, Judge Ito. I get it.
is a little judge. Judge Ito.
Little cross cultural thing going on.
That's right. Well, it's L.A. We're nothing. If we're not cross-cultural, we're nothing.
Well, yeah, Asians and Hispanics are based on current rates. They're gonna take over everything, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
Well, listen, when I was exposed to my first Korean barbecue burrito, so
Where'd you get that? I want one.
I at one of these taco trucks.
Oh wow, I didn't know taco trucks do like a fusion like
Well,
that.
these aren't your grandmother's taco trucks.
Clearly.
No, I mean, you know, when your grandmother was in Pennsylvania, in Bethlehem, the taco trucks back in the 1930s. Well, they didn't have anything like this then. They were mostly had pierogies and schnitzel. I don't even know why they called them taco trucks. It didn't make any sense. They didn't have tacos.
Yeah, I know.
They didn't even know what they were, but they still called them taco trucks. It's very strange.
Oh, all right. We better wrap it up. We're out of time. Charles, how do you want to close the show? You want some closing thoughts?
Yes, I should say. I mean, this is a very historic occasion. It's the end of the month of the Sacred Heart, St. John's Day, Midsummer's Eve was a few nights ago. Next week we'll be, I think we'll be doing the show on Saturday, which will be the 1st of July. Is that right? Friday is July 1st. Well, then all the more reason to bring this up. July 1st, ladies and gentlemen, has a very, very important set of dates. First and foremost, in the old calendar, it's the Feast of the Precious Blood of Jesus. And July is the month of the precious blood. Now, this is a wonderful devotion you should get into anyway. But what led Blessed Pius IX to add it to the calendar was his return to Rome after the Revolution of 1848. He came back in 1849, and he inaugurated the Feast of the Precious Blood on Thanksgiving. But wait, there's more. In the new calendar, it's the Feast of St. Junipero Serra. And if you're a Californian, or even if you aren't, that means a lot. Thirdly, it is Dominion Day, the National Day of Canada, the day the British North America Act was passed in London. I think Queen Victoria had already chosen Ottawa as the capital. Anyway, so for all you Canadians out there, wave the red ensign and the fleur-de-lis flag. Show them your both sides. Don't forget that maple leaf. That's you can sing the maple leaf forever, but forget the flag. The red ensign or the Quebec flag, except no substitutes. Thirdly, or fourthly rather, it's also the anniversary of my father's death. So He died on the 1st of July, 1996. So this is going to be 16 was 20 years. So this will be the 26th anniversary of his death. So keep him in your prayers. And let me see. There are a couple of questions that came down for the ruling today.
Okay.
And maybe you can answer them.
Go on.
All right. Nancy Pelosi was very, very upset. And so she said regarding the very next weekday that was coming up, bearing in mind this was passed on Friday. She said, if it's Monday,
it's off the menu.
And then she said, speaking to the priest who had just refused her communion, the soul you save
may be your own.
So with that, ladies and gentlemen, a very happy regards of the day to everybody living in infant safe states. And for those of us chained to infanticidal states, let's do something.
Amen.
God bless and good night.